Welcome back to All Day Live. Rob Wilson, Paul Blume here from the Fox 9 Investigators joining me in the comfy confines here, Studio 9. Appreciate you coming in here.
Beats the rain.
It does beat the rain.
Live outside the courthouse.
Window, so I rely on traffic camera, sky cams, etc. And the radar. But this is a very interesting story that you ran last night, and deserves a lot of continued talk here. This is a rare interview with a sitting federal judge. Tell us about who it is and how it came to be that you were able to talk to him.
So this is the chief federal judge for the District of Minnesota, so Patrick J. Schiltz. His name became familiar during all the litigation of Operation Metro Surge. He, of course, ripped ICE, the U.S. Attorney's Office, for hundreds of court order violations during that explosion in habeas cases we've long talked about. And I had put in several requests over the months to maybe get him to sit down. I thought maybe, there's judicial ethics, and certainly he can't talk about specific cases he's presiding over, certain legal issues, certain parties. So there were some off-limit topics. I'm not going to come on here tonight and tell her this afternoon and tell you I got everything from Judge Schiltz. But obviously a veteran judge. He's the chief judge, meaning he's basically the top judge. And I don't know, I think there may be about 15 federal judges if I'm looking at the photo. So we got a chance to sit down with him just to talk about, what really was interesting was, we weren't sure. He's not like a source of mine that I call. I kind of had to go through the communications office, line up the interview. He agreed to do it. I told him kind of the things I wanted to talk about. So I wasn't sure what he was going to say.
And what's interesting is, his name, made news, and a lot of the things that you covered too, in that the statements he made from the bench expressing his frustration with the amount of court orders that the federal government, and he's a federal judge, but here's the Department of Homeland Security ignoring or not responding to, whether or not they were ignoring them or just didn't have time to respond to them.
Or violating them. We want, these were detained immigrants. This is what this was about, right? The federal government came in here, swept up scores, thousands of immigrants, some undocumented, some documented, and there was this question about mandatory detention, and did the government have the right? Now, the government can pursue deportation. Judges can't, federal court judges in the district can't rule on the immigration cases. They can only rule on the detention component. The government is holding them behind bars.
Should they be released or should they be detained?
He could not rule, again, on any case. Someone could be appealing, they could be seeking asylum. Those issues will come down the road. The question was, did the government have the right to detain scores of these individuals that filed these habeas petitions? And there were more than 1,000 filed just between January and March. And, the judge mentioned, during the last year of Biden, there were, I can't remember if that year there was like maybe 12, 1 dozen. Last year, first year of Trump 2.0, we got up to 130, and then all of a sudden, between January and March, more than 1,000. So these cases were coming in just so quickly, and he talked about bringing in visiting judges to help because there just was not enough manpower.
It's a huge caseload. Huge caseload. We're going to run a portion of, is this from the story or is this from your interview?
This is a raw interview, about a minute-long clip, and what's interesting, I think, remember, this is a chief judge. This is a federal judge. He sits, he takes in legal issues as they come to him. They have to rule on these cases. It's not like the Supreme Court where you pick and choose which issues you may decide. These were lawsuits. They had to act, and he insists. I asked him, why did you feel you had to act so quickly? Because some of these were coming in, and they were signing off on them within 48 hours, and that was then putting the pressure on the government to get these people released, because so many of these orders were coming from our federal judges were siding with the detained immigrants. So, take a listen. You'll hear the guilt. He didn't even want to leave for dinner or put his phone down. Fascinating stuff from the chief judge.
All right, we'll talk more after we listen to this.
That was one of the most difficult things about this for us judges, is that, as I said, they were literally, these petitions were being filed from early morning till late at night. And if I went to a movie for 2 hours or just wasn't near my iPhone for 2 hours, that could be the difference between somebody being put on a plane and sent to Texas or somewhere else, and someone being ordered released and returning to their family that night. So there was kind of an emotional toll as well as just the work and the time. Anytime you were doing something that was not work, you kind of felt guilty, like you should be working, because somebody's somebody might really be harmed by the fact that I went to the movie or I went out to dinner with friends.
That is remarkable. He's saying, obviously, these judges are federal judges. They expect that they're kind of around the clock in a sense. They have to respond to things. But in this case, he was saying that if he was unable to see, being contacted immediately, this is the difference between somebody being released or somebody being detained or even flown out of the state.
And that was what it was. It was the movement, because there are other legal issues involved, but including jurisdictional. Once somebody is moved to a different district, most of those, as we've talked about, those immigrants, the detained immigrants were being moved down to places like Texas and some other places where the courts weren't as supportive of the claims. And so, yeah, he recognized, and then most of the bench did. He said just one judge on the entire bench sort of ruled in favor of the definition of the mandatory detention. And so, yeah, it was fascinating to hear, because I wasn't sure what we were going to hear, but when he described the emotional toll of it, that struck home. Again, he couldn't elaborate on the violation of court orders, but so many of those came because, in essence, the courts put a lot of pressure right back on the government to, if you've flown somebody out, get them right back up here, get them in front of an immigration judge, give them a bond hearing, get them released, those kinds of things. And yeah, he 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. all night, the staff, he's really proud of the work. I mean, I asked him, does he see, like a historic jurisprudence moment in the District of Minnesota between January and March of 2026? He stopped short of calling it historic. He said it's not like we created new law that's gonna change the world going forward, but he felt the impact of making these decisions, so many decisions, and really, and Rob, every time I come in here, it's unprecedented. He used that term too. I mean, he was just at a district judge conference with 94, all the district chief judges of all the 94 districts, and everybody was kind of buzzing about what Minnesota had just experienced, and no one had seen that many cases come through that one district court so quickly.
And he's the judge that, as you had reported, and I think you included it again last night, he's the one that said that more court orders had been violated by this department in a short period of time than in the entire existence of some federal departments. He's the one that said that.
I remember the quote, right? It's ICE is not a law unto itself, and that ICE had likely violated more court orders in the month of January 2026 than all federal agencies likely in their entire existence. He's, 20 years on the bench, he said maybe one or two orders violated over the course of any 1 year, but never by the federal government. No, he was sharp, and if you and he also made public a dust up with the U.S. attorney, which was remarkable. That Daniel Rosen fired back that his office had looked at all these orders, and that the judge was overrating or exaggerating some of the orders. If anything, they were minimal, and Schiltz felt obligated to make another public sort of follow-up order that he didn't have to, but he put it out there for the public, and those orders and motions and things that are the judge's right, that's where we can read the tea leaves of what's going on. So we tried to probe him a little bit, wouldn't give us much more. Again, judicial ethics there.
But he was accused then, in the wake of those statements, then he's accused of being an activist judge. I don't know if you were able to talk to him about those accusations or his thoughts, or if he's going to remain guarded and all that. Yeah,
he did remain guarded. He did remain guarded. The one thing I do want to mention, though, that's interesting is in the 8th Circuit, the appeals court that is the umbrella above our district court eventually ruled in March that the judges were not reading the habeas rule as the appeals court had. So I did ask him about that, because the U.S. Attorney's Office said the judges in this district were flatly wrong on more than 1,000 cases. And he was like, Paul, we don't use the word wrong. Clearly, the 8th Circuit, that 3-judge panel, it's likely going to head to the Supreme Court eventually. They interpreted the law differently than we did, that many of the judges all across this country. So they are now upholding the 8th Circuit's ruling. So as there are just a handful of arrests, but they're still happening. So those habeas those habeas cases may be decided differently, but he really took offense with the idea that the judges were wrong in this district, despite the 3-judge panel ruling out of the 8th.
Interesting work. I mean, again, it follows up on a lot of what you've been looking into over the last few months, and will continue to do so. And certainly anybody wants to watch that, I encourage people to find it on our website.
And he said that it will take years to unravel all the litigation. I mean, even today, I don't know if you've put it on your news, but like Renee Good's wife is looking to get her car back in a federal court case from the deadly shooting. Obviously, the habeas cases will slow, but he expects litigation just to take years to unravel from what just happened in 3 months in the Twin Cities.
And certainly the topic for law students for years to come,
For
too.
sure.
In
they'll study
law
this.
school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, thanks so much
You
for
bet.
coming in
Thank
here.
you for having me.